Today is 1/13 of the 2021. It's a Wednesday, and we are all tired because we're nerds. Max was saying he has to take a nap, even though in Alaska it's like 4 in the morning or something. He just woke up because he's a lazy bum.
But it's like...
Get there.
Like 27
no
o'clock.
One cares.
27 o'clock. Sounds about right. The big news for this podcast this week, though.
I'm pregnant!
We got our first... We got our first guest. We got one Joseph Castle here. He's here hanging out.
Hello.
He's over here looking all furry. You can't see him, but he looks like a caveman that got compressed vertically.
I was going to say like if Sasquatch got AIDS.
Yeah.
I've gone from homeless man to Viking to Civil War general, back to just a weirdo with no beard, and now I am back into my homeless phase. So...
I'll give you. You're on the edge of the Viking. It's a good look. I can't complain. There's a lot of hair.
The hair is getting longer, and that's what's really getting to the Viking. If I knew how to braid, that's when I think.
Oh, then you'd be in.
How don't you know how to braid? It's incredibly easy.
And I am an incredibly stupid person.
I have met you. You're not wrong.
Thank you.
Speaking of dumb stuff, Joe, you said you were on a podcast before? Like you were an executive producer of a project you're very proud of?
I mean, yes, I was a part of another podcast. It was just a couple of friends from high school.
Fucking losers.
It was, I don't mean to cause problems. I don't mean to talk S, but I didn't really like being on it, and it got around, and I was kicked off of it. So, but that's fine because they seem like they're actually doing pretty good right now. They have,
hanging out.
Yeah, he completely wiped his entire producer team, and he is keeping it going, and he's actually got 100 views or something already, and he has quite a few views, and it's good for him.
I'd like to him. I believe in him. Having a team of producers seems like a lot, but
it was
really
just
good luck to him.
Finding things to talk about, or things to do on the podcast. It was fun, but it was also very this is a bunch of drunk college kids doing something just to pass the time because COVID was boring in the summer.
And we're not that.
No.
I want to give a lot of praise to this podcast because it's actually, I think it's very different because you guys don't talk about hot topics, and you don't talk about politics and all this other big mainstream stuff. You guys just talk about your dorky nerdy stuff about swords and about raccoons with bow staffs, and I absolutely adore it. I am 100% for it.
Did we talk about raccoons with staffs?
Yeah, we were talking about bow staffs, and I asked if we would give a raccoon a smaller bow staff, or if you'd give him the same size bow staff and just teach it to be too big. We talked about that for 20 minutes. I'm surprised you forgot about that.
Dude, I got a lot going on in my life. I've got a lot going on in my life.
Thank you for the feedback, Joe. All feedback is greatly appreciated.
I have tons of feedback.
It's nice to know that people are enjoying it.
Is
it all good?
I have enjoyed so much about it, except for when Marcus talks dumb. Everything so far has been pretty cool. I've liked everything. The only thing is that book report and the fact that you haven't had Marcus read the Bigfoot erotica yet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna happen.
Yeah,
my next paycheck, he's getting one of those books.
Thank you.
I would like to pause this for a brief second, and as he said something about me talking about stupid shit, I held up my cord for my mic because I didn't even realize it was plugged in, so at some point it became unplugged. That's very much.
Are you plugged in now? Are you recording now?
Yeah, throwback to episode 3.
We're experiencing some technical difficulties. We're
Oh,
all going to make fun of Marcus in the meantime. I got a request that we shouldn't make fun of Marcus so much, but I realize that's really the heart and soul. That's the only running theme we have.
That's like telling a cast iron pot to not be made out of cast iron.
We got some fun topics for today, though. I know we got a couple little ones that got popped up, a couple big ones that we wanted to talk about carried over from last week. I know Joe's got a big one that's burning all in his pocket.
Oh, we know
Yes,
Joe has a big one.
Oh, yes. I have
Oh,
a
yeah.
very
You can
wonderful
tell by the
topic to
beard.
talk about today.
I've seen it. It's
Does anyone-
massive.
Does anyone want to lead? I got a little fun one if we want to start with that one.
I also have a little one, but it's not so fun. But it likes to wiggle.
It's the effort you put in.
Put a carrot.
Okay. So I was flipping through. I'm on my Spartan Purge. I'm on day 3
That
of the
was,
Spartan Purge.
It's Order 66, right?
Something like that.
The
Yeah.
Jedi? Yeah, that was Order 66.
So, Spartan Purge, though, we're on day 3. So far, I've done, what's it? It's 200 of 4 different exercises. So it's 800 a day. That's 2,400 reps over 3 days. It's no social media, no music, got a journal twice a day, no shopping at chain stores, no flavored drinks, only water, no processed foods. And I gotta say, 200 of a lot of exercises, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like I did the workout, that's just a lot of volume. Got really annoying really quick.
I do that every
So-
Tuesday and Thursday morning.
It's just, but it takes forever. It's like, oh. But I did
So-
find out this morning, I did 174 push-ups without needing to use my, I got like a slingshot from when I was doing shoulder rehab, and I used that to help me with my last 26 push-ups. But
There you go. So,
it's been fun.
how are you
Been
breaking them
enjoying
up? Are you doing one exercise, then the next exercise, and then the next exercise, or are you just supersetting and going through? Because,
Doing supersets going through.
well, because
I do
like,
25 push-ups. Yep.
go ahead.
I do 25 push-ups, then 25. I've been doing crunches, but I've been doing different sit-up variants. And then I've been doing 25 rows, and then I do either 25 squats. Because squats get really redundant when you're just doing 200 bodyweight squats, I started doing kettlebell swings.
Okay.
But I'm doing sets of 25 and just do 100, cross them all off the list, do 100, cross them off the list.
So I do that.
Eventually you get to 800.
I do something very similar as a work capacity exercise twice a week, just to increase my like journal levels of like being able to work, doing physical labor for longer periods of time, but training to do it in condensed manner. And I do 10 rows on the suspension trainer, which is like a TRX trainer if you don't know what that is. 10 push-ups, 10 abs of some sort, usually just crunches because I'm lazy, and then 10 squats. And then I do that 20 to 30 times, and I don't stop. I go all the way through it. It only takes about a minute a set. So like
It's really not bad
to do
once you
20
get moving
sets,
on
it's
it.
usually like 20 to 22 minutes. Even if you're sucking, because I did like some hot cardio yesterday, and I did that, and like fucking 2 base layers, a sweatshirt, a trash bag, another sweatshirt, and a shell. So like lost like 4 pounds
if you
in like
keep-
25
yeah.
minutes. Like,
If you keep your work rate up, you can really get a good workout pretty quickly with just basic stuff. It fucking sucks, but you can do it.
well, it's good for certain things. Like one of my big pet peeves with the HIIT training and with the advancement of CrossFit and like cultural norms and stuff is that people have completely forgotten the importance of like actual endurance training and work capacity training in your normal training routines. Like if you're a like strength specific athlete or like a really specified athlete, it might not be as important, but it's important to everyone to go out and hit that, like your long steady state days, those days that you're getting out and you're for 25-30 minutes minimum, you're getting to a moderate working heart rate of like 120 to 140 BPM, because it raises your overall level of like cardiac ability, and you're able to recover, push blood through, you're just strengthening your heart and increasing your work capacity to an extent. And people forget that a lot, and I think the 15-20 minute hit it and quit it workouts where I'm going to be super fucking intense for 25 minutes or whatever is going to make them just like a phenomenal athlete. And it's good for a lot of things, but when it comes to being able to do work for longer periods of time or recovering between sets, it's not quite as great. It's helpful and should be part of everyone's routine if you are in any sort of like GPP type person where you have to incorporate movement into your daily life. Like the HIIT stuff is definitely important because it allows you to go from 0 to 60 really quick and then recover from it. But if you have to do that more than a few times, if you don't have that LSS training in, you're fucked. So like for rugby, it is a great example. there's a lot of 0 to 60 in rugby. There's a lot of, all right, I need to go right now, and I need to go from this baseline to max effort and then back to this baseline. And that's great to train that.
Max,
Question?
could you give LSTT? What is that?
Oh, LSS, long steady state. So best example is you go out and run at a moderate pace or at a slow pace, one that you can comfortably talk at for an extended period of time. Typically it has to be over half an hour.
Even like a long walk counts. Okay. As long as it's like a power walk and you're moving pretty good.
So the important part is to kind of take your heart rate as a gauge. And it's a rough gauge, but you should be able to kind of figure it out. And it should be between 120 and like 145, 150 beats per minute. Yeah.
Yee rapper woo woo.
That wasn't even a topic for
but
today.
Yeah. That was a good little bit though.
Yeah.
A little bit of fitness wisdom. But yeah. We should be ending the purge next, I think, Thursday, if my days are correct in my head.
Probably not.
So.
You can't access the calendar.
It's a metric calendar, so it's off. It's weird.
Are all three of you doing
doing a metric week.
Purge?
Are you going by noons?
chickens?
No, fuck no, I'm not doing the purge.
He's not cool enough.
I already hate my life. Why would I want to hate my life more?
I was actually gonna comment in the video that you posted when you talked about that. If you could share that with more people, or like post it somewhere so people could like look at it, because there was like a lot of rules
Absolutely.
in it, and it sounded kind of cool.
It's pretty wordy. I have it boiled down a little bit, so I have it like printed out on one page for reference. So I can make that available. I'll put it in the description at least.
Let's make a sweet graphic. Infographic.
Ooh.
It can have like a Spartan sacrificing a child to the mountain gods.
Troy Butler with Baby Shrek. Just holding him up.
So I have a question.
I believe. I bet you do.
What's your zombie apocalypse plan? So I was listening. I was, listening to podcasts as I do, and I listen to like a lot of military dudes and former military dudes and stuff. And one of the things that often comes up is preparedness and just being generally prepared for most situations. And it's an important thing to do in life because, as I think the past almost a year now has demonstrated, is that society is actually incredibly fragile, and it can go from being relatively peaceful and relatively stable to just mass panic and hysteria in days, if not hours. We saw shortages in a lot of things, and there was a lot of superstores and stuff, like grocery stores and shit, that were running out of stuff on the shelves. And it wasn't because they had interrupted supply lines, it was just because there was such an increased demand for it, you couldn't access it. So, with that being said, and that got me thinking a little bit more about preparedness. But with that being said, it kind of wanted to bring that around and think about it from a more fun angle. One that what's the fucking government agency? It's not FEMA. It might be FEMA. But one of the government agencies.
I think the CDC.
It might have been the CDC.
Released like zombie preparedness.
Yeah.
BBC.
Because a lot of prepper type people, like preparedness type people, put out that whenever people get together in our mass, like large groups, they act essentially like zombies, where it's just complete herd mentality and they don't really think as individuals. And we've all kind of been taught this, because I'm sure we've all been through classes where we've been taught what the bystander effect is, like anti-bullying classes and shit, like the couple first days of like different classes in high school. And like if someone's being bullied, you can't look around and wait for someone else. You gotta like go stop it yourself, or at least like call it out, or like first responder classes and shit. So zombie plans?
Joe, you got really excited. You want to go first?
Well, that was gonna be my topic. I was
God damn it, Joe.
not quite. It's a little bit different. It was more of a setting up a scenario type thing, but after this we can go into mine. It works pretty well.
Come back to it.
Yeah.
Didn't you there was something that you wanted to talk about with collision sports or like blood sports?
Oh, yeah.
That's a great movie.
Well, I kind of put what I thought 2 and 2 together in my head was, I don't know if we want to go into this right now or if we want to stay on
That
this
equals
topic,
4.
Let's do zombies quick, and that'll give you a sec to like put it together in your head.
Okay.
We'll come back to you. That works.
Yeah.
So Marcus, what's your zombie plan?
My zombie plan: fucking hide in a corner with my thumb in my mouth. I don't know. I have several firearms.
Why are you hiding? You have a sword.
Oh, that too.
Where's your other hand?
I don't know. Where's my other hand? On my Glock 40. No. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I guess. I mean, if push came to shove, I guess I'm just gonna wait to ambush someone. Hate to say it, but that's reality. And if you don't have a firearm or a sword, you're kind of SOL. So
What's your immediate plan? Zombies. CNN. Well, not CNN. Facebook. Zombies.
Facebook. So I'm probably either
Down
gonna
the
go
street.
raid a place.
They're on 2nd Street. They're coming towards your house. What do you do? Go.
Barricade.
What are you barricading it with? Dead bodies? They make a really great barricade because they're about 18 inches thick and they stop bullets better than dirt does. Don't worry, Joe. He's coming back.
I mean, I could probably try and manage that. Just like shoot my neighbors, steal their stuff quick. Grab some big industrial-sized railway spikes, and you just like. Pop, pop, pop,
They're not vampires, Marcus. They're zombies. Spikes
but,
won't do
like
anything.
you're just gonna pound that into the wall.
It's
Otherwise,
drywall.
furniture.
It might be Latin plaster. I don't know, but you'd probably want to get a stud finder and try and put it into the studs.
Okay,
because otherwise,
I don't have that though.
It's because
Don't
it'd
go
always
into
be
your
going off
basement
around
though.
you.
Don't go into your basement though. The fuck was that?
Why? Because it's haunted.
No, is that from the Return? No, that's Night of the Living Dead, where they go in the basement and then they're kind of trapped. I think.
Mm-hmm.
I like the one where they're in the mall.
Gotta go up.
Oh, so that was a good idea.
Up is
Going
always
you always
good.
you can always get out still. Keep going up, down, you can't go
Yeah,
up.
let me just jump off a 5-story building.
Shit, at least you can get help from up top. You can find a way. You can see out,
And there's always a final solution.
Marcus,
If you're
I'm
up
very
top.
disappointed with your lack of preparedness. You of all people should have had a plan made.
I was gonna make a joke, but I decided not to.
Yeah, that was the final joke, Marcus.
I think there's a lot of value, so Marcus and I are in Stephen's point. I think there's a lot of value in being close to the university, just for the value, there's a lot of people here, well, not right now because COVID, but there's usually a lot of people, but there's a lot of resources. There's chemicals, there's heavy doors, heavy storage, lots of rooms. If you could get a university building, tall buildings, you could really be good for the long haul. You have a lot of resources, you have a lot of moving and shaking. So if you could somehow use the university to your advantage, you'd be really set. You'd have a lot of resources.
Gotta get the one
But
you're gonna
house on top of it.
I have access
But
to.
you're kind of screwed in the meantime.
I have access to stuff at Walmart, so I mean that's always the
Right.
place. Like the inner
That's a lot.
CO.
But then Walmart's gonna get raided right away.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I can just hide out in the inner CO because I know the password. I don't know.
They're basically already
But I think-
zombies, so.
Yeah. I mean,
I think-
yeah. You could say that about people there.
I can and I will.
Yeah.
I think you gotta kind of ride the wave right away. You gotta kind of barricade in with whatever you can, heavy appliances, nails, lay low, as many doors as you can put between you and them. But at some point you're gonna have to go out, and so I think being in the Wisconsin in the north also helps because then you have the advantage that zombies, if they're outside, they're gonna freeze, so they're gonna either be incapacitated or go home if they're just people acting like zombies.
So I have a real quick counter question, or not really a counter question, but it's very similar but slightly different. So I'm assuming all of us have seen
Is it still a
30
question?
Days of Night. Yeah. So how does if a 30 Days of Night situation, Max, if that something like that happens, would your plans change at all, or are they pretty much the same?
I have not seen 30 Days and 30 Nights.
Oh.
30 days
Night.
of you have not seen 30 Days of Night.
I have seen From
That's a
Dusk
good
Till
one.
Dawn, and that had Selma Hayek in
Oh.
it as a stripper, and that was
Yeah,
pretty good.
He's fine. Yeah.
It's also
Well,
not a
okay.
zombie movie.
Right.
Max.
30 Days a Night, a vampire movie.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would say watch that because it's kind of applicable. I mean, you're not that far north because the movie takes place in Fargo, Alaska, but it still might apply to a degree.
So the basic plot, I'm not going to ruin anything,
Basic.
is basic. I gotta do my best over here. So the plot, without ruining anything, there's a town in the Arctic Circle, and it's time for a long winter, and they're so far north that there's no sun whatsoever. So these vampires show up, and they're like, "This is vampire time because there's no sun. They don't got to worry about anything." So these vampires are like laying waste to this whole town, and it's kind of the story of them surviving.
They're not
what
like
happens there.
they're not like Edward Cullen vampires either. They're like, I have fangs like the size of like a penis.
It's a strange measurement
Yeah.
tool.
Hey, let me measure.
not-
Hey, I want to measure the size of your fangs. Can you kneel down real quick?
They're not Nosferatu, but they're like kind of like a classical zombie,
Yeah,
classical
they're-
vampire.
Like
They're
Buffy's.
kind of
Yeah,
Not-
more in that realm.
Buffy. Yeah.
Yeah, Craig over there has only got 2.5 inches of fang, but Jimmy over there, he's got like 7 inches of fang. Like, what the heck?
He's just showing off.
It's not
I
about
don't
the
know.
size of the fang. It's about how
Exactly.
you use the fang.
It's so big, it's not even
thick,
useful.
nice and thick.
It gets
fang.
in the way. It just goes all the way through their neck, and they die before you can suck all the
Right.
blood out of them. They're not even useful at
That's
that
a
point.
waste.
What are they for? You gonna go impress the female vampires? We don't breed anyway.
Joe, do you have a zombie response plan, or you want to go to your
Yes,
next?
I have-
Hold on.
I've
Hold on,
thought about
hold
this
on.
one.
Sidebar. Do vampires have to drink extra blood in order to get their dick hard?
No, because like, do we have to drink more water for because there's blood circulating in them anyways. So why would they need
Is
more
there?
blood? To an extent, there would have to be.
Look, they're vampires. They break all human nature laws.
Oh, yeah.
But like, there's gonna be
They're gonna
like
go
the
get,
blood's
like-
not just. Okay, so I would like to imagine that
Like
the
they
blood
eat blood, but then
is
do they also
circulating.
have blood? Yeah,
So
Yeah,
then
they
do they
have
just
to
get a
have
boner every time
blood.
they drink blood then?
if they drink a lot, if
Andre
they drink too much.
Andre
they
Sapkowski
blush.
When you eat
on
enough
this.
sauerkraut, don't you get a boner, Max? Come on. Talking about your gallon of sauerkraut.
It's a good
Oh,
question.
sorry,
Which I'm
2.5
still
gallons of
not.
sauerkraut.
Which in fact equals
j-
a gallon, Joe. Which I still have not
Two
finished yet.
half-gallon jars, okay?
But I have found out that my dogs like sauerkraut.
The Germans are just a breed of vampires that run on sauerkraut instead of blood.
Okay, so sauerkraut is made out of cabbage, right?
Yes.
Yeah, fermented.
So can you use red cabbage too for sauerkraut?
Yeah.
Okay, I've
Why
just
not?
never seen it. I was just
No,
I was
there
just
is-
thinking about that today.
Dude,
Just
it's really good. It's really good. So there's like red cabbage. I don't think it's sauerkraut, but it's something that's like very similar, and it's fucking delicious. If you ever see it, they sell it at Aldi's. It is amazing.
Aldi.
Red cabbage and
Fair enough.
apples. Aldi's.
It's little
Aldi.
oldies.
Aldi's.
I know.
Okay,
I
Joe.
say all these too, but I'm just being that guy.
I know. I'm being stubborn. So Joe, what's your
Joe,
zombie
what's your
survival
zombie?
plan?
Yeah.
So I've thought very long and hard all my life because I am terrified of zombies. I used to get horrible nightmares about zombies, and
Fuck yeah.
occasionally still do. So it comes down to a question of if you can survive where you're at right now, or if you can get out. Because ideally, going north to Canada, where there is plentiful resources and there is protection for most of the year because of how cold it is, the zombies' bodies, unless they're keeping warm somehow, they're gonna freeze. They're gonna get all rigid and freeze up, and they're not gonna be moving at all.
Pop quiz.
So-
What is the internal mechanism that keeps people warm? What is like the body mechanic function?
Blood.
No. Like,
What is it?
what's it called?
Homeostasis.
I am talking about homeostasis. This is a very poorly
That's a
worded
weird-
question.
That was weird.
Anyway, so by going north, I mean, I feel like by going north, you're gonna have a lot of resources. You're gonna have a lot of just room to be and away from people also. plenty of resources, room to be, and this is gonna be only happening for a couple years because after a while, those bodies, their zombies are not gonna get enough food, and eventually, like even down south near the equator, them bodies are gonna start deteriorating and just getting disgusting and just breaking down completely. So I'm thinking head up north for probably about 4 or 5 years, and by then, hopefully, all the zombies will have either frozen and you've been able to take care of them, or they've just kind of melted away, you know?
Very good point.
But yeah, this is something I've taken very seriously because I am scared of death, of having my organs ripped out of me while I'm living and eaten like they are sausages. So
Don't go
Sounds
to
like you
Thailand.
need to be more afraid of bears. Being honest here.
yeah.
Or pumas.
See, you can't run away from those though, but with zombie you can't. You can get away from them very easily on feet.
Depending on the zombie.
Yeah,
Definitely
Yeah.
not World War Z zombies.
But
Yeah.
28 days. 28
Yeah,
days
you're
they were
screwed.
fast.
Oh,
Yeah.
those ones are fucking terrifying.
I need to watch that again. Oh my god. Sorry.
So I think the shelter-in-place strategy is a really interesting one because I think it's really time-sensitive because I think for most people, shelter-in-place is much, much more dangerous over a long period of time than leaving is. You obviously can't leave in the first couple of days because, like maybe in like the first week or two, because everyone's going to be going fucking crazy and it's just going to be wild. The roads are going to be packed. There's not going to be much opportunities for movement, right? I mean, I think. But
Yeah, you're probably right.
the longer you wait, I feel like the more zombies you would have to contend with and the more that you would be hunted and singled out as you were the only prey around. Now, I think there's a sweet spot though. Like not a sweet spot. Like I think there's a certain amount of time that you could wait where it would again become viable, where they would disperse enough that you wouldn't necessarily be hunted individually. But I think being in a city would always be, or close to a population center would always be rough.
I don't know if anyone's talked about this. No one's talked about this yet. But I think another important thing is if you have firearms, save one extra little friend too, just for you. So, I don't know.
Little ray of sunshine over there. Thanks for that one, Marcus.
Yeah, you're welcome. Like I can't
Little Wednesday night pick me up.
I can't imagine sticking a barrel in my mouth and like being like, yeah, this is my best option. But I mean, compared to being eaten alive, yeah, it's
Fun
a better
fact?
option.
Fun
Don't-
fact, every
what-
U.S.
what?
Army post has a handgun with one bullet and a revolver, or not a revolver, and a razor blade next to the flag, or to the brigade flag, or like the headquarters flag on every single post. And if you are the sole survivor of that post, it is your responsibility to lower the flag, dispose of it properly, which means cut the field of blue from the stripes, and then you off yourself.
Jesus.
So
That
that's
is on
like
every single
government
post.
ordered suicide.
Yes, that is on every
Interesting.
single post. You are not allowed to surrender.
I
In that
get it.
situation, there are certain
Okay.
situations where like it's somewhat viable, but for the most part, no.
I don't. Depending on who's around you too, like maybe surrender isn't exactly the best option either.
Has that ever happened? Like,
I will look it
Sure.
up. I think that was something that if I'm taking a stab at it, I would say that probably came around about some of their shit where the Japanese overran some posts in the Philippines.
Yeah,
That's what I would
okay.
guess where that policy came from.
So the two things would okay. I wasn't thinking of that in particular. I was thinking about like a westward expansion situation where like you have like an outpost, and then you're overrun with like Native Americans. That's what I was thinking. But like
I was
the
also
Philippine
thinking that.
the Philippine one makes sense to me too. Like if you were like one of those original like soldiers who were in like the Philippines, like 1941 or 40 or early 42, whenever the Japanese took over the Philippines. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the Bataan Death March was not a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
in other words, collision sports. Joe, did you get your question together?
Yeah, I have. It was kind of more of like a rambling theory that I sent to Marcus one day, but I thought there was some viable ground to it. And it kind of dips into what I was so cool to say about how this podcast doesn't talk about politics too much, but this one is a little bit related to politics, and it's about how I think how my theory was that U.S. sports has gotten to, as currently we can all tell that U.S. sports like football and basketball is hyper aggressive compared to other country sports. Like if you compare basketball in America to basketball in Europe, the amount of physicality is very different. If you look at like rugby and compare it to the most comparable thing in America's football, I know that there's a difference between just the sport itself, but the way the way players carry themselves in the sport, in football, it's much more vicious and warrior, trying to hurt. And you can, and throughout like football, it's developed into that kind of vicious, aggressive, and blood-seeking level of, the safety's coming up top on that wide receiver, and he is putting his shoulder into his head and trying to kill him. So what I was thinking is that, where did that kind of start? And I was thinking that football started getting its popularity because of how violent it was probably around like in the 1900s, like closer to around like World War II, correct? Around the 40s. That's when football kind of started to pick up and kind of really got moving. And I was wondering why, and I was kind of thought that maybe the difference between the fight and like kind of as it developed more into like the Cold War, the fight between capitalism and communism, and Americans became so like centralized in ourselves as the best and the most dominant and aggressive thing on the planet with our capitalism, that it showed up in our sports more as well. And that's why football started to get more and more aggressive, starting like during the Cold War. That's when it started to kind of get more and crazy,
I wonder if that's as much of a cultural thing or as much as the sport has evolved. Marcus, if you're getting a lot of background noise, you can turn your gain down.
Yeah,
Stop
I just
squeaking your chair.
I just unplugged my mic.
Perfect. So, but back on topic, I think with the way the sport developed...
Marcus, stop!
It's unplugged! What the... Why is it so...
It's even louder!
But with the way the sport developed, the way rugby has grown, we figured out how to do things. And how to do things is a lot more technique, and it's you tackle people a certain way and you don't get hurt. Because if you do it the wrong way, you get hurt, so you don't do that thing. But with football, with the addition of pads, when you have a lot of pads on, you feel invincible. So, like, there's worry there where it's like, oh, I get this helmet on, I could run through a brick wall, whatever. Then you start to go, oh, I can just kind of sprint head on at this person with no or fewer consequences, even if the consequences still do exist, because pads aren't that helpful. So, I think that and the intense commercialization of it. So as soon as you start putting a lot of money on something, people really want to vie for that. And if being the most violent safety in the league gets you paid extra bucks, people are going to fight for that, and then it's going to evolve into that kind of where it's like this hyper violent. That's where Vontae's Perfect comes from, is because somebody's like, you need to be a scary linebacker, you need to hurt people to be a good linebacker. And it worked for so long, he made it to the NFL, and now he's hurting people, but now he's suffering. But the world's changing him around him, but the game didn't. So I don't know if that's as much of a cultural thing as much as it's like the evolution of the sport.
I would say it's almost a mentality. Okay. Go on.
I think it's money. Why do people watch NASCAR?
Crashes.
For crashes. Why do you watch football? Like, unless you're getting fucking... Why does the casual person watch football? Because
to yell at Tom Brady.
A regional area sport, or like a regional area following. Like, you follow the team that's close to you. Like, it used to be a very common thing that whenever you'd move to a different part of the country, you'd start following the local football team or the local basketball, like the local sports teams and shit, and that plays a lot into it. But bigger hits, more violent gameplay makes for more exciting television. Like, let's face it, no one's looking up a compilation of most legal rugby tackles because no one gives a fuck. Everyone's looking up, like, who is the most, like, one of the most loved players by fans in rugby history?
Sebastian Cabral.
Richie McCaw.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
Richie McCaw.
Richie McCaw was fucking hated by almost everyone he played against because he's quite possibly one of the dirtiest international rugby players to play sport. People don't like clean sports. And I think the Richie McCaw shit is a fair enough example outside the United States that it's not. It's a people thing. It's universally a people thing, not just a U.S. thing. But people don't like cleans when people play clean. They want to see the dirty hits. They want to see big hits. They want to see people get fucked up. I think the big thing in the United States that changed it is internationally in rugby, it used to be a lot fucking dirtier. A lot dirtier, a lot bigger hits, a lot meaner hits. They didn't used to enforce the high tackle shit like they do now, and there's always debates online after all that bullshit, right? But the leagues and like the actual like rules committees for this stuff really took an interest in preserving player health and integrity and started to change rules to accommodate to these injuries that they were actually seeing as medicine advanced, and we were starting to see the long-term impacts of these players, and took an interest in players' health. And we're kind of starting to see it in the United States with football now, but that shit doesn't sell. A lot of fans don't like that, and they refer to it as like the pussification of the game. They like the big hits. And a lot of that could come back to where did it start from and where did it come from? But it's just, yeah. I don't know.
So, and I know that culture is also a really big thing of why America. And it's hard to compare football to rugby just because they're totally just very, very different altogether. But I also wanted to bring up the point that when you look at like games that are played by both, like most countries, like baseball, you can't really be violent in, so that kind of doesn't count. Marcus, you're so. I'm sorry. But you look at like basketball also, and in America, it's just so much. I mean, it could be the culture, but in America, it just seems like it's so much more like aggressive. Like the blocks in like American basketball is just so much more aggressively dominant and like, bam, slapping it in your face. And
where do most of the players for international basketball come from? What's their like? There's no way you know the answer to this question, but like, what level of like socioeconomic status do they come from? Because most of the people that are pro basketball players in the United States come from a very low, like poverty level, or like from a poverty level in the United States, and most people in poverty tend to just be more violent in general because poverty breeds crime, and it's not necessarily violence and crime are linked. That's not exactly what I was trying to say, but like you see more importance placed on personal violence and like being extremely physical and people that don't have as much and are in unfortunate situations and are in poverty than you do from upper middle class or middle class households. And I think that can play a lot into it, specifically in that example. No idea what level of poverty or what level of economic status foreign players are in, but I think in the U.S. at least, I know a lot of basketball players don't exactly come from great situations, and I think that might have a factor in it.
So I think this is where the mindset kind of comes in too. Like you kind of do whatever it takes, because if you're coming from like these poor economical like areas or whatever, you're really trying to defy the odds and beat the odds. So like it really comes down to like doing whatever it takes. So if it means throwing an elbow or playing like the chip on your shoulder, playing a little dirty to have a better game and like better yourself, then I think that's where it kind of comes into. And just giving it your all. Like if you're like getting in scraps and you're trying to find ways around the rules to like beat people or like throw an at. Kind of repeating myself here, but like through an elbow, I mean, you're definitely going all out, and I think like that's part of it is like these backgrounds help fuel people's mentalities. I would say. I don't know. If that makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm tracking what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I just wanted to bring up because there was I felt like there could have been a slight correlation between the culture that became from the Cold War that established the Americans' dominance due to capitalism and how it could have influenced into the culture, which I guess kind of what we're saying is kind of proving into it. But I don't know if we're gonna end on this, but before we kind of go off to it, I want to just say that I feel like there could be like some more like research into it. I don't know like the actual
absolutely.
numbers, but
yeah.
I think maybe that the reason why a lot of athletes are poor is just because statistically there's just a lot of poor people in America.
There's value there.
We
I
have
agree with you.
we have
Funny,
such a high
funny
population.
enough, for a later segment on the podcast, I actually happen to have the percentage of people in the United States that live in poverty, and in 2019 the poverty rate was 10.5%, which was the lowest rate observed since estimates were first published in 1959. So yes, 10.5% of like 350 million people. Like I think the actual number was like 333 million people lived in poverty, and that is a fuck ton. It is.
Yeah.
But one of the big reasons why I was trying to play off of your why you see so many athletes that are from poverty or poor situations or growing up poor and shit is because it's one of the very few like professions that allows for incredibly rapid economic change with a limited skill set development. So there's not a lot of schooling that you have to go through. There's not a lot of professional development you have to do as an adult. Most professional athletes that are good athletes that are like going to be going to the NFL or going to the NBA are being scouted by the time they leave high school.
That's fair.
That's a good point too.
Yes,
I'm sure
I think it's actually a really interesting topic. Sorry, go ahead. What
Yeah.
you say?
Oh no, there's so many different factors where you can go like look into this, but I think I like where you were going with this, Joe. I think that's kind of an interesting aspect, and I'm sure there's definitely the Cold War's impact and what it means to be an American has an effect on like American sports as a whole. I'm sure, but like there's so many different things with going to this. It's hard to like point at one individual thing, I think.
Well, I think it would be interesting to look at the development of sports in like communist countries during the time and compare kind of the culture and the difference in the changes in both the cultures at the time. And I think that'd be where we could actually find the truth and if there's any actual evidence to the theory, if there was anything.
Okay, I have a question for you. So, since we're going to talk about communist countries, obviously I'm sure you would use like Russia as one, but who would you also pick? Would you pick like China and then like maybe like a lesser known communist country or like a smaller communist country? Or like what would you do? If you had to like pick.
That?
Oh, to you, Joe, sorry. But like if you were like to
I-
look into it, were you going to look into like certain countries or just everything or what?
I think that looking at everything would be the better way to get actual and factual data, just because the more data you get, the better the results are going to be, because you can be more, the more data is always going to be helpful in finding stuff like this, but I'm not a leader or have much knowledge about communist countries back in the day during the Cold War, so I would probably just assume that if we had to pick, like, do the top three, if we could only choose, so...
I might be remembering incorrectly, but I don't believe domestic sports existed inside the Soviet Union.
How do you know that?
I know
Did
a
they
lot
have
of
state-sponsored
really
world
random
sports?
shit. Yeah, I think pretty much the only thing they actually had was their like state-sponsored international level sports, and that was pretty much just to show basically the same reason why Hitler put only fucking the blonde-haired, blue-eyed bastards in the Olympics in 1936, and it was basically just to prove that the Soviet Union were better athletes than the United States.
You mean the Third Reich?
Yeah. But same reason,
Okay.
Soviet Union did it for pretty much the same reason that Hitler did it. But
Okay.
I was watching Jordan Burroughs did an interview. Well, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about when it comes to Olympic teams, the U.S. is the only non-state funded Olympic entity on Earth. So, like, if you're a Russian wrestler, you start wrestling to go to the Olympics when you're like 4, and that's all you do your entire life. You don't go to normal school, you don't go to college and wrestle in college, and then you transition out. It's like you go and your career is Olympic wrestler.
That's why.
And that's all state sponsored, and that's why it's a lot easier for them to do those. That's why they got caught with all the doping scandals, is because it's easier for the state to do it because they see it as a national pride thing. So it's an investment into themselves. But for the states, it's a personal pride, the national pride, but we allow the competition on the front end. So you can make that team, but you're not just like grooming people in.
Can we talk about doping at some point? I don't know if we talked about this before, but
we can definitely talk about that.
I would love to talk about that. Oh my god.
So, Keegan, do we want to go into your topic, or do we want to talk about how many hours in the week should you work?
My topic is a quick one, so it might be nice to do mine, then we'll go into the hours one.
Sure.
So my question for you guys, what's the cheapest and easiest way that you could anonymously mess with someone that'll leave a lasting impact for the rest of their life?
Poop on their doorstep.
So, I was going to say leave a watermelon on their doorstep, but that would also count. I feel like that would almost be too on the nose.
Only if they're laying down.
There's no...
Wait, but do you have to...
Is there anybody else? Does anyone have... No, it's anonymous.
Oh,
so if you're, what's the way you can mess with someone that they're gonna remember it for the rest of their lives? Be like, wow, that was a weird night.
You could vandalize their house or spray paint and write something really specific to them.
Like
that would
but
send a
then
message to us.
You gotta
but that's too destructive.
That's too
You're gonna get in
destructive.
trouble. You're gonna find you.
And then they can read your handwriting.
Okay.
Guys, come on.
It's spray paint though. It's a little different. Like my circular handwriting, often quoted as girlish, isn't gonna translate to spray paint.
But it could.
Okay, yeah, I suppose.
Joe, do you have any
I
ideas?
think you could. One way to really mess with them is in their fridge plant a ball of hair. Like if I just cut off all of this and put it in a container and put it right next to their hamburger they're gonna use the next day. I think that would just freak them out. If you could do it and you could get into their house, plant it there, and they'll never know that you were there, especially if they live alone. I think I'd have to move out of that house. If I just opened my fridge and found a container of hair.
Mix it in with
That's
meatballs and spaghetti. So they casually just what?
A hair burger. Just make a nice hairy
Why
burger.
did you say that?
So,
why did you say that?
Speaking of opening containers and finding unwanted things, I have a friend who, I forget who it was, but whenever he was a child, I think he was a teenager or something, was pissed off at a boss or a teacher or something. I think it was a teacher. And this dude always used to have cashews and nuts on his desk and stuff. So my friend bought a thing of cashews, took all the cashews out, shit in the container, and covered it back up with cashews, and gave it to the dude, and watched him eat one or two before he left. It's a little fuzzy on remembering the story, but 100% this has actually happened.
Wait, so he gave it to him, or he just
help.
replaced it?
I think he gave it to him as a gift.
That's too much.
Oh my god. Dude, how
Did
did
you
You know
not
what the
that's
backlash one that was?
jail.
Did he get figured out? Or
I imagine at some point he figured out there was shit in the container.
you just bite into one and it's just, this one's not crunchy. What the heck?
I didn't realize these were chocolate.
Must be chocolate. Yeah. That's what
It's not
it's
gooey chocolate, you know?
very watery.
Let's transition to a different topic. Can we do so? We talk about something else, please?
I really think shit on the doorstep's the best way to go.
Falling.
Imagine you just wake up, you go out to check your mail, you're drinking your morning beer, and there's just shit on the doorstep.
Morning beer.
Bag of
news.
flaming shit.
Yeah. It's like, huh.
It's a classic.
I mean, for me personally, at this point in my life, I just wouldn't even be surprised. It'd also be frozen, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I'd just be like, yeah, that's about right.
So that's how today is going.
So, cool.
I knew something was going to happen today. I just didn't realize it was going to be now.
Glad I got out of the way first thing in the morning.
Okay, you guys ready to transition to the prime time topic of the evening?
I don't know if it's really transition. We're still going to talk about a flaming bag of shit.
I mean, yeah. So I've had this question kind of floating around in my head. And my perspective on it is like if you were going to write a survey question and then ask 100 people to get the answer. So how many hours should a person have to work per week? Just kind of wide open. And then there's a lot of different constraints you could put on it. Like how many hours should a person have to work? How many hours does a person have to work to be successful? How many hours a week does a person have to work to like move up in the company?
How many hours a week does a person have to work to make a living off of OnlyFans?
The answer
How long does it take to bend over and take a picture of you?
But
I'm pretty
to answer the
inflexible,
question,
Joe.
how many, just cold, if I just ask you guys,
Even longer
how
if it's
many
cold.
hours should a person have to work per week?
Without thinking
Picking up.
about anything at all, any social, economical, whatever it is,
Nope.
whatever the situation
Just
is,
cold, just
I would say 35
intentionally
40.
vague. 35, 40?
35, 40.
Joe?
I would say should work 32 hours a week.
Okay.
I think
As
to
many
me,
You had
as
to put a number on
necessary
it,
to
Max?
accomplish the task that you are trying to accomplish.
That works too. Even better.
I really can't put a number on it. I can't.
So,
That's fair.
how...
But if so, we're focusing, yeah?
I was just going to say, so like, I work at the front end of Walmart, so if you're a cashier, you just cashier until it's like not busy anymore?
Is that your goal? Like, what is your overarching goal as being a cashier? Are you trying to move up in the company? Are you trying to make beer money? Are you trying to raise money and make sure you have money for your kids? That's what I'm getting at. Like, there is a goal you are trying to accomplish, even if you don't quite realize it.
I think what you said is probably the best. Because you can't really beat that. So like it's up to you as a person to figure out like what you can work and what you can't work. So I think that makes sense.
And I understand like the ethical implications of Keegan's actual question towards this, because it's trying to set a standard as society, and I don't really consider myself a norm of society. I kind of think my views are a little bit outside of the norm. But I think having more people approach it with that attitude will lead to more correct answers. Because I don't think this is... I think there are limitations that probably should be set to avoid unnecessary exploitation. Or not unnecessary exploitation, that sounds like there's sometimes necessary. There is necessary exploitation in certain circumstances. But I think people should have to take it upon themselves to determine what that standard is for them. And if they feel that they can get by working 20 hours in a week, and they can make a comfortable living in that way, albeit to them, and that's how much they should work. Now, if someone feels like they should have to work 60 or 80 hours a week, maybe they should talk to someone and like get a little help with the project. But there are certainly times in your life where it is 100% necessary to be working 80 hours a week. Now, should you be doing that for extended periods of time? Yeah, probably not. But I think it is up to the individual to figure that one out.
See, that takes the fun out of it, because that's just kind of like it's like kind of a non-answer in the correct direction, where it's like, well, yeah, whatever works for you is how many.
Do you want to know what
But if we're going to look at if we're gonna look at some other planet
Do you want to know
where everyone's kind of working an average job,
what the second question of your survey should be?
Huh?
How many hours in a week do you want to work?
That's a question too.
Yeah.
Because I think
can't be 0.
there's value in there being a difference between how many hours that a person like has to work to be like a useful member of society, and the amount that you can or should be working to move up in the company. I think working standard hours, you kind of get standard expectation from the people around you. But if you work extra, then you should be able to get extra.
Yeah.
So like if I am scheduled to work 40 hours and I want a raise, I should probably be putting in at least 50 hours so I get that overtime, so I can show that I'm like extra capable and have the capacity to work hard and I'm worth that extra value.
Yeah.
So
Assuming that you're actually on task and doing shit. It's like, I know there are high schoolers who I work with who they don't work 40 hours, obviously.
them goddamn kids.
But when they're there, they do their best. Like, I'm talking about one in particular where he's always all over the place, doing what he's supposed to do. He does everything he wants to do and more, or like needs to do and more, and he doesn't have any problems calling in or anything like that. It's like who he is. And like obviously he's not going to move up because I don't think he's going to stay in the company. But like if you're someone like me, I guess I would be like, wow, I really like you. And if I had more power at my hands, I would be like, hey, let's try and do something here.
So
that's not my call.
I think there's a pretty good follow-up from that, just as an add-on to the survey question, is quality hours. Quality versus quantity. I think all of us would agree that less hours with a higher quality are better than a more hours with less quality. Like, I don't think unless, like, depending upon what your goal is, I don't think 80 hours a week where you just stand there and do nothing is necessarily the right path. Like, now, like, you got kids, you got, like, you get paid by the hour, like, whatever. But I would, in many situations, if I was a owner of a business, I'd much rather have someone be able to do a job in 1 hour as opposed to 4, and then get the fuck out and go home.
I think it definitely depends on what kind of industry you're in. Like, if you're a factory worker, you kind of got to work that long shift. That's the nature of the beast. But if you're, like, in a project-based situation, then you could probably get away with working 30 if you plan things out intelligently. And I think that's what the ability to have a salaried employee is kind of thinking, is that some weeks you'll do a little more, some weeks you'll do a little less.
Yeah.
But depending, it kind of averages out. Versus an hourly employee is where you just kind of have to be here no matter what.
So, like, I know my friend is, like, he should be working for, I don't know if he still works. Well, anyways, he had an internship for like a year at Harley Davidson. He said their engineers were there as long they were there. He's like an engineering major. He said they were there as long as they needed to be. So, like, they got the project done on time and everything. So they're gone by, like, noon. Instead of like 4, and like the project needed more time, kind of like what Max was saying before. So as long as you need to, they'd stay a little extra, but like that's how it was for them. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a good idea.
So to further this debate, let's create a couple of straw men, so that way we are actually able to set an example and kind of come up with bullshit numbers for people. Because I think in order to actually get numbers, we need to have set people that we are arguing about or discussing.
Okay.
So we should have a low income, an average income, and a high income. And those are just the 3 easiest ones for me to think of. If there's others, I'm completely okay with hearing them. I think those are just the 3 that come to mind the quickest. Because I think, and specifically related to an economic sense, those are probably some of the best representations.
Yeah.
So our low income, we're obviously like low income, and their goal is to try and they're in poverty, they're trying to escape poverty. They have dependents that they're trying to care for that have an inability to work, they are the sole income provider for however many little people's or fucking dependents, right?
Yeah.
You have average income, like average, like middle class type person. They maybe single, maybe married, just like normal American house, like whatever the fuck that is, like just
stereotypical.
Yeah. And then
4 or 5 people maybe.
Your high earners, like your high income high earner, like specifically earning, right? Because if you get into just, actually no, fuck that, like normal rich, not like we're talking, not high earner, not like started at the bottom, worked up to the top of the business type person, normal, like extremely wealthy person, like we're talking has millions in cash, right? So,
and how many hours a week should each of those people have to work?
Yes, and I don't think the last.
And we want to phrase it like that.
I don't think the rich person's gonna make for a really good conversation. So let's try and focus.
No, I don't think so either.
I don't think the rich person works at all. To be dead honest with you.
They're there.
I don't think, because because the person you're describing is a multi-millionaire. They're the person who owns a company. I feel like those people tend to not do their own work a lot of the time. I feel like they have appointed people, boards, and members in the whole company that actually, the middle class and so the low wage people that are doing all that work for them. They're just sitting there.
Typically, the person you're describing is handling more big picture stuff and handling acquisitions and breaking into new markets and investment and stuff. I think you're right with the person I was describing though, because I was very much leaning towards inheritance, trust fund child type person.
Okay. Essentially retired.
Yeah, retired at 22 because daddy made $300 billion. Or whatever. But I think the first two will lead to better conversation.
Yeah.
So, low income, poverty, trying to move out of poverty.
Hit it, Marcus.
Okay, so if you're in poverty, you're probably more than likely going to need to work more than like a standard 40-hour work period, because chances are the job you have doesn't pay well because it's like a low skill. So whether that be you working in a factory or if you're working at McDonald's or something like that, 40 hours a week wherever you are probably isn't going to cut it. So you're probably going to need to pick up overtime. So I would say probably at least 50 hours or something like that. Because you have to save up some money too. You can't just like have a treadmill money where it's going in and out. You need money to invest and save up so you can get the fuck out of there. So I would say you probably at least need to work 50 hours, if not more, because you're more than likely not going to get. You're not going to be making a substantial amount of money per hour because you don't have the skills, whether it be physically or mentally or whatever. So I would say you definitely need to work more.
So I agree with the sentiment, but we're talking perfect world, not realistically, like perfect world. Should someone have to work more hours to move out of poverty?
I think in a perfect world, I think if you were doing 40 hours of work, I think you wouldn't be in poverty. I think, like, if we could make this perfect society, I think if you're working 40 hours a week, I think that kind of is the number where it's like, yeah, you should be able to live where you're not in poverty, you're not suffering, you have your basic needs covered. Like, you're not rolling in it. So, but I think if you're working 40 hours, you should be able to survive.
So 40.
Yeah.
I would say 40.
Okay.
35, 40. I would say 40 or less. If you work a couple extra, you should
get rewarded I would say, that.
Yeah, it's a side note. It's not like anything like crazy, but like it also teaches you like time management skills too, and like what you need throughout the day, like how you can like better your time usage or your time spent, I guess, because like obviously you have a good chunk of your day taken up by work too. So like whatever you do after work, should be prioritized, like what gives you meaning or something like that too. So I think that's a cool thing that comes with working. I guess I'm not saying like it's awesome, but I mean like it helps you sort out some of your priorities, or at least it should. I would like to say so.
If you had to put a number on it for the lower class, what'd you put?
Me?
Yeah.
Probably, if in an ideal world, probably 40, just like everyone else, I guess.
Joe, what do you think?
Okay,
Do you think 40 is our number?
in a perfect world, I think 32. But in a realistic world, if in this situation you're talking about how they had dependents, right?
Yeah.
Because if they have dependents, they can't
so.
work more than 40 hours. Because who's watching their kid? Who's watching those people? Who's watching those people that they need to pretend? So and that's what the real world is like, is that they get stuck in things. And 40 is kind of that set limit. Otherwise, they're having to do things in, like, getting, like, childcare, which is expensive. And that's what really limits people a lot in poverty. And that's part of the trap that people don't realize exists. And one of the small issues that are part of this giant elaborate trap that is laid out before them.
So 32.
Perfect world 32, real world 40 or more if available.
So, kind of sidebar before we work in the next straw man, though, is, and we touched on this very briefly on the last one, is outside of work-related activities. So, at what level, because everyone's done homework for jobs at some point or another, whether it is going to school in your time off, like at night or whatever, whether it is doing reading and research for work. At what level does that bleed from work to home start to count as work hours and count towards the total amount of hours worked? And at what level is it just personal development?
So, like in my situation, I'm in a master's program and I work full time.
Mr. Smarty Pants.
So, I'm doing my best over here. So, am I working a 40-hour week with 10 hours of just generic master's classes that I'm taking? Or am I putting in a 50-hour work week where I'm not getting paid for 10?
Is what
so then
you're
I'm
doing
still working 50.
Going to directly affect your position, salary, and favoritism at your job right now?
I would say yes, but not in a significant way until I'm done. So it's kind of like investing time.
I would still say at some level that I think you would have to do some really weird math shit and figure out a good percentage of your time that you could consider as part of your work time. Because I don't think adding full 10 hours, is that actually how much, are you just taking one class?
No, for me it's 2 courses, but the way they're kind of managed is it's like 10 to 15 hours a week.
So
if you're doing things right, it's about 10.
Okay. So I don't think you'd necessarily want to add all 10 into the total hours worked this week, but I could completely see adding some of it into how much you worked in a week.
Like if 70% of it counts or whatever, because the other 30% is like fiddling with paperwork or whatever.
Well, and how much of it is considered personal development too? How much of it is not necessarily related to work, unless you want to consider personal growth or progress towards a future career as part of your current work schedule?
That's a really good question. Like, are you actively working for work now, or are you investing in yourself for a job that you're not in yet?
And should that be counted towards your weekly hours worked?
Or does it count towards your education for your next? That's a good question.
Because I know there's a lot of people whenever it comes to, we've seen with rising technology, we've seen massive questions about work-home life balance and how it's a real issue with our cell phones and people being able to reach out and get you pretty much any time of the day. And how you're getting work information at Saturday at 10 o'clock at night and you don't work weekends. Your salary Monday 9 o'clock till Friday at 5 p.m. Like, right? And that's starting to become an issue. And we're seeing work-home life bleed and causing problems with family and stuff. So where does that stuff start to apply with this? Like,
I think that's something that we as a society haven't touched yet.
yeah. And I completely forgot where I started that question, and I completely had a point to me saying that, and I forgot it.
So,
Good one.
are you talking about, like, if you're, like, sitting on the couch and you have, like, an associate or a colleague or whatever call you when they're at work for, like, 5 minutes and be like, hey, man, I'm having problems with this. Can you, like, walk me through? Are you talking about stuff like that? It's like...
I think I was, but I think that would be directly work hours.
Or even at, like ghost hours is, I think, what my boss has called them in the past, where you're checking your email.
Yeah.
When you're, or like you have the email app on your phone.
Yeah.
So you'll get work emails when you're doing other stuff.
I got it. Came back. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. I think what Keegan's talking about is being, with the ghost hours, I think that's being the prepared for work, which I don't think would count, but it's something you have to do going into work. Like, you have to be like as a politician, you got to be aware of what's going on in the world, you know? But it doesn't count, like, checking the news feed doesn't count as, like, working. And, like, for Marcus...
But if you're checking the work news feed, like, if I'm not checking my emails, I'm checking my work emails.
So if you're the president and you wake up and you read the presidential briefing, that's work. You go home, turn on CNN, that's not work.
Okay.
Wait.
I want to get at Marcus. Marcus, when people calling a supervisor about how to do things, I think that's just the supervisor being a nice person and helping them do their job. I think when it's like a 5-minute phone call, I think that's just being a good human being. And like I don't know. I just feel like that's something people just do out just because they're nice people. But what you two were getting at about I think the politicians is like kind of a bad example of looking at it.
No, I agree.
But I think like maybe like look at like a scientist or like a blacksmith, somebody who's like has to work with stuff. I think if they were researching into like how to be better at their job, I think that counts as work hours because it's directly influencing their performance as an employee. So I think things that things that influence how you become like a training seminar or like a
like if you're a psychologist, just being up on the literature.
Yes.
Or like when you're at home, you might be reading, instead of reading a book you wanted to read some literature, you would be reading a couple articles from one of the new journals.
Oh, yeah. So,
but then does that count as... Is that what you're thinking about, Joe? Because like that's the thing. Like if you're a scientist, you got to stay up on the literature.
Yeah, that throws a little bit of a wrench in it because reading the books and staying up to date, I don't think they've ever considered that like a working hour. But it's definitely like some jobs.
That's something you have to do.
Yeah, some jobs you're required to do things out of work, and it's never going to be considered work. And I think that's one of those things. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about right now is stuff that is just never going to be considered time, like salary.
Yes.
Or payable work hours, but even though they are kind of very important to the job performance.
And that's, I think that's the important takeaway from this part of it is if we are actually surveying people to find out how much they work, and we are trying to determine like a number of hours a week people should work, I think we need to figure out how much of the week people are actually spending on work, not necessarily at work. And I think this will vary incredibly by industry because if you work in a factory, you're probably not really going to be taking work home. But if you're a business executive, I doubt you've never not taken work home.
Or a teacher that has to bring stuff home to grade, then they're thinking about how to make the next worksheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important to the conversation because it's just going to skew it so much. I think if we just went off of time or number of hours spent at work, I think we'd come up really close to the numbers that we are suggesting. But
like if you worked like if you had 3 questions, your first question was like, how many hours do you work a week? And like of those hours, how many are actually at work? Kind of do a compound one there. How many should a person have to work? And then how many should a person have to work to move up?
So, fun fact.
If you're going to do a 3-question survey.
Fun fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics already has most of that stuff.
Oh.
Lovely.
They don't have how many should you work, but they do have it broken down by age and sex and race and ethnicity.
Asian sex?
Yes. The best kind of sex. The
Television.
most
Thank you for
reproductive
that.
of them.
The most reproductive.
And they have...
That's funny.
That's a good one.
I don't care who you are. That's funny right there.
They did a study, and this was... I don't know because their site sucks and their survey sucks. This is last modified January 22nd, 2020, so it's considered relatively up to date, and I imagine with the census from last year, it'll probably be more up to date really soon. Oh, this data's from 2019. It's at the top of the fucking chart. But they have it broken down. I hate this graph. I'm sorry. But through this one and a bunch of other graphs, they have it broken down by total work. They have worked 1 to 34 hours. Average number of people who worked 35 hours or more. And they have the average number of hours worked, total at work, and people who usually work full time, which are some interesting demographics. And then there is some more, because I found this all from an article from thebalancecareers.com. They're the ones that actually turned me on to the Bureau of Labor Statistics study, and the article is titled, "What is the average hours per week worked in the U.S.?" And they go through and break down a little more, although their first statistics are pretty fucked up, so just take it with a grain of salt. They can't recount anything properly. But they actually have work from home hours along with work hours. So,
what are some of the numbers from that?
Yeah, so I was going to get there. That was actually something I want to bring up, because I also have like some average money numbers for shit too. We can talk about later. The number of hours worked on average for just a normal American was 38.9 hours a week.
38?
38.9. Now, the careers...
So about that 40.
The Balanced Careers website or article says that it's 34.4, but I couldn't find that number mentioned actually in the Bureau of Labor Statistics study, so I don't know where they got that number from. So I went with the safe one of 38.9, which is what the Bureau of Labor Statistics cites.
Is it like, is one the median and the one the mean or something?
It might be, but I couldn't even find that number mentioned in the report. And it's not really a report, it's just a fucking graph. Or a chart.
Oh.
As people get older, they tend to work more. Men tend to work more on average than women do by 3 to 4 hours per week. There's very little difference in race or ethnicity with how much people per work. It's half an hour or so a week, with whites and Asians working 38.9 hours per week on average, and African Americans working 38.7, and Hispanic and Latino working 38.2. We work an average of 8.5 days on a weekday, and 8.5 hours on a weekday, and 5.5 hours on a weekend if you work weekends. It does bring up that although women typically work less in a week, they perform more time doing household activities such as housework, cooking, lawn care, or household management by 15%. So 84% of women versus 69% of men spend time doing household activities. I was actually kind of surprised by both. They're so high.
I wonder if the amount that women spend more than men doing housework is the same amount that men spend more at work than women.
I don't remember.
You're saying men...
They have some... I can send this article to you, because it has a lot of really good links to the different reports. And I saw something that kind of correlated to that in one of the reports, and I just don't remember it offhand.
Fair. Because, like, if it was like, oh, like, guys work an hour more a week at work, and then women work an hour more at home, that would make sense to my monkey brain.
So if I read another sentence down, this is a direct quote. On the days they did household activities, women spent an average of 2.6 hours on these activities, while men spent an average of 2 hours. And that is on time spent doing household activities. So, to the more relevant portion of, or like at least to our conversation on this article, on days worked, 81.7% of all employees did some or all of their work at a workplace, while 23.7% did all of the work at home. So I think the work at home debate's kind of interesting, because having that work-home life separation, I think, is kind of tricky whenever you work from home, and it's going to be harder to just turn it off, and it'll bleed more into what is post-work hours. Like, when does it turn off?
I got a question here. I have something.
Yeah.
So everybody's initial, how many hours should somebody work? Not talking about all the straw men, just general should. Mine was 32. Marcus?
40.
Keegan?
As many as necessary to accomplish the goal.
And then mine was like 35, 40 or less kind of thing. Like, I don't think you should have to work more than 40 to survive.
What is your... Okay, I was thinking just, like, why, what should we? I'm not talking about the 6 hours, but why do you have that number? Why is that number what you think it should be?
I'm going to go with an arbitrary 40 at this, because I think it's impossible for me to answer the question from my current standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay, but then why? What is your reasoning for that number?
Because that is the established amount of hours to work based upon the the union protesting in the early 20th century and the standards set by the U.S. government.
I was gonna go there at some point.
That and
that sounds
with
like
the
a
modern
cop-out.
school system.
And so, like, the real answer for me is still there, though. Like, it's the established social norm. It's not... It's enough that the person is putting in an ample amount of work and they are shown that they're working for a living, they're actually trying to do something, but it's not too much where it's going to completely dominate their life. Like, I think, honestly, having a range, probably 32 to 40, would be a better way to say it, like, for me, but I would 40. I think 40 is a solid number. I don't think it should be exceeding 40 for most people.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I think what impacts us a lot is that social norms have even wrapped into the education of our children. Because for a lot of people, like, school doesn't represent, like, oh, I'm going to send my kids to get smarter. It's like, this is free daycare. Or this is daycare every day, 5 days a week. So, like, when everyone goes to work, everyone drops their kids off at school. When they're done with their 8 hours of school, you meet them again back home, done with your 8 hours of work. Maybe there's an hour here or there that's different, but I think there's a lot of, like, that impacts a lot of people's schedules. Like, hey, I want to be able to see my kids. And when they're at school, I want to work. I want to stack our time together so we can...
Yeah, I think
And I think...
what I was going for.
I think that social contract of school, like, that was to do factory work.
Yeah.
Like, school's organized the way that it is to train people to do factory
that
work.
and, like, well, like, I know we have 3 months off in the summer for, like, harvesting and stuff like that, too, where that's at least what I've been told multiple different times, and that's why we have 3 months off, or, like, schools in Europe have, like, holiday periods where they'll have, like, more time off throughout the year, but you laughing at the creaking ceiling.
Yeah, I just fucking
Oh, it's your ceiling. I thought it was your chair.
No, I'll tell you more later about that. But, like...
Why is there 2 people fucking up there? Are they fucking?
But, like, anyways, like, I know... Fuck! You fucking took my mind.
And it's episode 9, and we have officially broken.
I'm going to put that in the description. Hour 24 in, Marcus yells at the ceiling.
Is that the name of the episode? We broke Marcus?
Yeah. So anyways, like, I'm kind of stealing this from you, Keegan. But, like, yeah, that's part of the reason why we have, like, 3-month summers instead of, like, extended holiday periods throughout the year. But, like...
How many hours have you worked this week?
How many have I?
Yeah.
I don't know how many hours. I've clocked
'Cause that
like
could be
9
why you're
days in a
broken.
row. I was gonna clock in today. Would have been my 10th day, but the time when I was gonna go in there to take my U-learns, it was already like 3:30. I'm just like, fuck it, I'm going in tomorrow.
Scheduling is such a stupid process
It's
at grocery stores,
stupid.
isn't it?
It's stupid, but like
That's a whole.
But anyway,
Sounds
I feel
like
like
a
it's.
different
I
topic.
feel like it's only grocery stores that schedule that way.
probably.
Restaurants are bad too.
Yeah.
But
it's
scheduling
just
is just such a
stupid.
terrible way. I hate how they do it. I thought it was so bad. You could work 14 days in a row. I thought that's just so weird.
Yeah, it's pretty asinine right now. Like coming into my day off to do stuff. I'm not salary. I'm hourly. So, but it is what it is.
I'm
like
salary.
I love it and hate it.
I have no free
Fuck
time.
you. I don't want to say love and hate because it's okay. I guess it's not really difficult.
No.
But like at the
You
same
love to
time, I
hate.
wanna
You're
do it.
getting it wrong.
Yeah, sure. But like, I think 40 is good because like it's significantly better over like industrialization. If you like think of like industrial like like the United States or like England, where people are working like 15, 16-hour days, and then they get Sundays off, and then they go home and drink and get fucked up, and then they show up late in our Monday morning. Like to me, like that's significantly better, but like it's still enough time in your day where you're devoted to doing your job, and you still have plenty of time to do sleep and other things like procreate. So yeah.
So, I have two things I want to discuss. I want to know why Joe's one's different. And I'll have a couple of questions on that too. But the other one I want to discuss is traditional workday versus like 4 10s in a week or 2 24s in a week or something, as opposed to just 5 9 to 5s, because I think that plays an important difference. But first, Joe, 32 hours. Now, are you saying you want the cap to be 32 hours, or like people should work less, or are you trying to aim for exactly 32 hours a week?
Where I'm coming at this is when I worked full time over the summer in third shift. Oof.
Which sucks.
Yeah, it sucked. But I think that maybe it's just the third shift that's what really like messed with me and like getting to like interact with people, because staying up all night is kind of weird.
Yep.
And trying to
Most
talk
likely,
to you.
yeah.
But I think that by lowering every day of the work week by 1 hour, with that 8 hours, 8 hours down from 40 hours would make it every day 1 hour less, basically. I think with that 1 hour of time, you would be able to do a lot of things each day. You would have 1 hour extra to do whatever you needed to do, see whoever you needed to do, and do it. I just feel like it would add more flexibility to options of what you can do after work or before work, because you'd have more time to have a social life, which I think, especially now, is something very difficult. And like like third shift workers, it's very difficult to interact with people at 6 in the morning or 8 in the morning because nobody's up, or having that time to go home and do something, actually, because I think that a lot of people are stuck in that trap of that 40 hours and they don't have like that time that they think they need to do anything. So I think giving them that extra hour a day would help them be happier, really. And I think that's why I was saying the 32 hours, because I think 1 extra hour in the day would make people a lot happier and more happy in life and at work.
You are aware, though, that if you just took 1 hour off of each day, you'd have 35 hours in a work week, right?
I thought of that too.
He does have a good point there.
You know, I'm not the smartest cookie. My brother's the math minor. I do psychology. I'm not meant to do math, but
Well, that's fine.
I
think the point is
it
still
made
valid.
sense in my head. It made sense in my head.
Well, and your point
That
is
was
still
like-
valid, and I don't disagree. I think giving people more time to do them is probably a good thing for most people, but it just does not work with some types of jobs.
And yeah, like, and I think most of the jobs that you were thinking of, and based off of your responses, you were thinking really a lot of project jobs, and those are the jobs that obviously you got to do
Hourly
it until it
jobs.
gets done.
Yeah.
So
But yet for
Okay.
hourly jobs, is different, and I guess realizing the truth, I can bump it up to like 30, 35 then, or like 34.
Math wise.
Math doesn't.
I get a calculator out if you want.
I would
Okay.
really appreciate that. I'm very bad.
So, I'm gonna give you a label with some stigma, and it might not be applied entirely correct, but you're kind of like a quasi neo-Marxist in the way that you are applying it to the expressing concerns of the people over like economic growth and like not economic growth, but like from what I get from like reading Marxist things is like the concern for people over like the industry, and you're trying to give people. Oh God, I am really putting myself in the spotlight here. You're trying to give people like a step back, and you're trying to give them like a comfort wall, so they can do more things with their life than just work. Does that?
Do you want to know why I care about? Because a corporation won't die if it's overworked. A corporation makes more than plenty money. And I know there's a difference between corporations and small businesses. I want to make that very clear.
Yeah.
A small business will have the people there that will get the jobs done in the short time. Like obviously I feel like people in a small business are more like engaged workers. I feel like they're happier with their jobs, and they're more willing to do what needs to be done. And working in a corporation,
I mean, to an extent.
like working
sure.
at
Oh, we
What's
lost him. So,
He'll be back, I believe.
well, hey.
Oh, there he is.
hello. What is going
Yeah,
Well,
you're.
it happens.
It'll flash sometimes.
on? Okay, I'm trying to. Okay, let me fix this.
Just click video and it'll show again.
We do need to start thinking about wrapping this up because we're
Yeah.
running long for
That's
even
our
our
longest
longer
one so
podcasts.
far.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily bad because we do have another person.
No, and I think this is
You
actually a
know.
good
Yeah,
conversation.
it was good.
Yeah. And if you
Whether
tuned
We had
out,
a much
tuned
more
out.
relaxed podcast.
Anyone else
It
will
was
listen
nice.
to it, but
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, cool.
Do you have any
can I-
final words for us, Joe?
Cool.
Or you want to finish what you're saying?
Fuck corporations because they're not real human beings. That's why I say that. They don't have feelings. They don't have emotions. They don't need to sleep. Human beings need to sleep. They have a family.
Amazon
they have
loves
places
me.
to be.
Amazon loves me. It always knows where
Boss
I
makes
am.
$1.
Okay, you know what my brother said today, and I found it hilarious. He doesn't call Jeff Bezos by the right name because he doesn't want to give him the respect because he's so fucking rich. He calls him Jeff Bezos.
Your
I just thought
brother's
it was
a.
funny.
I was gonna call him
Oh,
something,
he's a-
but your brother's a dipshit.
Apparently, I've been calling him by the wrong name.
Jesse's a character, but
I
man,
think
he-
Jeff
he's-
Bezos is
he's-
a good person in some aspects, and the fact that like he made all of our lives easier by providing us with Amazon. I'm not.
Can we
saying he's a
talk
good
about the
person.
fact that there's absolutely no reason that Sears should have gone bankrupt and we should be dealing with Sears, not Amazon right now?
Oh my God! I worked
Can we
for.
talk about the fact that there's a person who looks exactly like me?
Huh?
We just had a bunch of topics come up right after we said we should end the podcast because it's been really long.
We
You're
never,
right,
it's not a
we
bad
never
thing.
even
We
talked
need
about
topics
the
for next
topic
week.
I actually wanted to talk about today too.
What was that?
Well,
It was maybe if I'm ever on this again, I will talk about
You
it then,
probably
but I'll
will
keep
be.
it secret for now.
fair enough.
Seriously,
Write it down though so you don't forget it.
Oh, I have it written down in my notes. Before we end, can I say one
Perfect.
thing? I
Absolutely.
am extremely humbled and very grateful to be on this podcast with you three. You are
And thanks for coming on.
You three are seriously the most influential people I know in my life.
Don't
And
do that
it
to me.
is-
I'm a horrible
Oh, no.
person.
I'm one of the.
No,
This
shut up,
is
Max.
one message I want to give out to the people. If there are people in your life who influence you and mean a lot, you should let them know, because you most of the time you are too scared to let them know, or or just are uncomfortable doing it. But I really think people need to start showing their appreciation to others a lot more, and I really want to give my appreciation to you three for really helping, just being awesome people. and having a lot of influence on my life for the short time that I've known you. Really you're really cool people.
That's really sweet of you.
You know, I just want to, and I really want to encourage everybody out there to thank and appreciate the people that they want to and need to in their lives. If that's the one thing anybody takes away from what I'm saying, please do that. Thank you.
And while you're doing that, please go unlike and unsubscribe from someone else's channel
The
and
Savage
someone else's video.
Experience.
From the Savage Experience, from now on, you need to go follow and then unfollow the Savage Experience and leave a nasty comment. Oh, and I need to make a correction. Last week, I happened to say that YouTube does not have a dislike feature. It does. It has a thumbs down. So
We're going to follow that wholesome comment with Max's response of being a hyper horrible person.
still leave a mean comment because fuck them.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
It was
you,
super
Joe.
fun to have you on.
Yeah.
It's an honor to have you as a guest and as a friend, and yeah, this has been fun.
I can't thank you
We'll
guys
probably
enough.
have-
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'd love to
Alright.
have you on again. This was
Oh,
a
yeah.
hoot.
Half.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening.
Oh, topics.
Be sure to
Topics
like-
for next week.
Comment. Oh yeah, topics.
Marcus,
Joe, what do you want us
topic.
to talk about?
Give me a sec. I was thinking about it before.
I had something I wrote down.
Marcus, you got to talk about those crocodiles that ate those guys.
Yeah, I
Or just crocodiles
Yeah.
chowing down on people in general.
Oh,
Talk about the
speaking
dude
of
that
which-
fucking rescued his puppy from that crocodile. Or
Yeah,
alligator,
that came
was
up.
known.
That came up. There was a thing in like during World War II with like British soldiers running into a swamp, and like estimates of like out of 1,000 people, 20 people survived because they were
Fuck yeah, I like those odds.
crocodiles.
You, sh-
Well, more details about that,
you,
but next week.
you guys should talk about those that fiery hole in Russia that's been burning for like 70 years.
It's because the Earth had Taco Bell.
Yeah, it's
I would love to talk about that whole. I know what you're
yeah,
talking
like
about,
the
Joe.
gate to
I'll
hell.
talk about that.
Isn't that
Yeah.
what it's called?
Yeah.
Talk
know
about
shut
that.
up.
That's
Yeah.
The natural gas leak or whatever.
yeah.
Oh, I spoiled it.
Oh, yeah.
They just-
We'll talk. I'll talk about it.
I love that place. That's so funny.
Well, I don't know if I want to do the research necessary because it would require quite a bit, but there is a certain political, what's it called? Like a political
Ideology?
mechanism that has been working its way through Europe, Eastern Europe, post-Soviet bloc countries over the past 10 to 15 years, and it's called the Color Revolution, and it's basically the way that certain countries were manipulated into ways of thinking that caused certain types of revolutions in their country, and they all ended up swinging more pro-Russian. And I'm not entirely sure I want to talk about it, because it's actually going, to do a convincing job of explaining it would take quite a bit of research. But I've seen some pretty cool things on it, and so it's a possibility. It's one of those things I might put out there.
How about you give it an attempt, and if you don't talk about it, you could talk about something else. But see if you can give us the skinny on it.
Sure.
Instead,
You can put together 5 minutes, and if it sounds good or bad.
It's
I think
happening right
you
now in
should-
Belarus.
I think you guys should revisit animals you could fight with a knife, your hands, and a
that got
spear.
brought up.
I think that was a lovely
Sea turtle.
topic. I think you guys should revisit something like that, or one of the first topics you did. I think that'd be funny.
And seeing if we're better now.
Yeah, I think you guys really underestimated
Spoiler,
yourselves.
I'm not.
Max, I think you should
Yeah,
do
you
some really
could
light
definitely
reading.
take something bigger than a Labrador with your hands.
It's a big dog.
Like a poodle.
They have teeth. Even
But,
though
like,
they have soft
Marcus
mouths.
is
If you're gonna
bigger
fight
than
a
that
dog,
dog,
how
and
do
you
you
can still
fight a
choke
dog?
him out. Come on.
Yeah, but Marcus
But,
likes it.
it's a-
He just kind of lets it happen.
I think you guys vastly underestimated yourselves.
I appreciate that. We'll look into it. We'll see. What we should do is we should make a tournament of animals that are fighting each other
Yeah.
and see what animal would be the dominant one. And one of them has to we all have to be in the tournament.
And Max is gonna read.
But it has to be
card.
Marcus with a spear, Max with a knife, and Keegan with his fists or something.
Let's give Marcus a gun to make it fair.
What kind of gun?
He only has 6 bullets.
one
Any
bullet.
gun.
It's a 7-round tournament.
Let's just do
We
a
give
revolver.
Max a revolver with 1 bullet and a razor blade.
Give
And
Marcus
he's
a
last in
long
his
rifle.
sport.
last.
Hey guys, let me fire maneuver. Just like aggressively, just like.
Marcus is doing that while a
Rinse
chimp
and
is
dry.
on
Oh
his
shit! I
ass.
dropped the bullet.
We are in
Bad
separate
news.
conversations. All right, we should probably wrap it
Okay.
up.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening. Sure to
Thank
like,
you.
comment, subscribe. Thanks,
Unlike,
Joe.
this comment,
This was fun.
unsubscribe.
Yep.
Especially from the
You know the
savage
drill.
something.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah, fuck those dudes.
Hopefully.